Hi, I'm Julie Van Winkle, the UTLA AFT Vice President and one of your bargaining chairs on the UTLA bargaining team. And I just want to briefly explain our position about the district's budgeting. So we're going to get into some details coming up. LA Unified is on a roadshow. They're hosting town halls and administrator meetings. The district is saying that they're in a budget crisis. Why do you think they're saying this? Because we're in contract negotiations. This is what they do. You're going to hear it over and over again. Deficit spending, financial stabilization plan, et cetera, et cetera. They said the same thing in 2019 when they had a $1.9 billion reserve. And what happened? They grew the reserve even more to $5.03 billion. But they say it because as a tactic, it can work until you look at the actual finances. So let's do a little of that. So first, we'll start with the most misleading thing about the district's roadshow presentation. They only talk about one part of the reserve. The LAUSD presentation says that there is $1.4 billion in the unrestricted reserve. That's the blue and green graph you see on the right side. The district is saying that the green bar is the only part of the reserve they can spend and that that's all they have. The first thing to point out is that the $1.45 billion is not what they say they have. It's a projection of what they say they will have by the end of this school year. For the sake of having the same definition, a projection is an estimate. It's based on spending they have not yet done and may not do. LA Unified always overprojects. But that issue aside, how can their number be so different from ours? As of now, LAUSD is saying that they have that green bar, $1.45 billion. On the left side is what they really have, which is $5.03 billion in reserve. The only part of the reserve that is restricted is the legally restricted reserve. Right now, that's $900 million, the red bar on the left graph. There's also a legal minimum 1% statutory reserve, which is $132 million. That's the tiny sliver of beige in the UTLA graph on the left, in between the yellow and the green bars. But let's stop here to clarify something. Restricted doesn't mean you can't spend it. It just means it has to be spent on certain things. It can be spent on things like salaries and positions for special ed, arts teachers, and Title I positions. Then there's Fund 17, which is the black bar on the top part of the left UTLA graph. Fund 17 is unrestricted. They just moved $577 million into a fund to make it look unavailable. So if you add all these up, what they actually have, not what they say they might have in the future, is $5.03 billion in total reserves. That's a big number, right? That's why the district doesn't want to talk about it. This chart here shows us the district's misplaced priorities. You may have seen this chart in the all-member email a couple weeks ago. It shows you what percentage of the district's total spending has gone to UTLA salaries each year since the 2013-2014 school year. These percentages tell us something about how much the district is paying people and how many people they're paying. Pay increases would increase the percentage, and so would staffing increases. In 2013-14, about 40% of the district's spending went to UTLA salaries. Last school year, 2024-2025, they spent about 31.04% on UTLA salaries. Over the same period, the percentage they spent on contracts and services has increased by about 10% per year. So actually what this chart tells us is where we are in the district's list of priorities. Now, think about when you get your paycheck. What's the first thing every month that you make sure you take care of? It's probably your rent or maybe your mortgage. This chart shows us that we are not the district's top priority. They keep decreasing the percentage of money they spend on our salaries. We're not the rent. We're not even the cell phone bill. So part of our fight here is to get the district to change how they spend the money they're already spending on the wrong things. We want to be the rent. The second part of our fight is to get the district to spend the reserve that we know they will have despite their catastrophizing. When the district does its annual budget, it's required to project out for 3 years. They're always projecting dire economic conditions in the second and third year. We call that the third year cliff, and it never comes. This chart shows you their 3-year projections from their unrestricted reserve, including Fund 17, over the same period of time as we looked at their outgo. Now, this can be a lot to take in, but here's what's important. The purple bar is what they projected they would have 3 years out. Look how low it is. In 4 of those years, it's actually negative. The orange bar is how much they actually end up having in the reserve. Look how high it is. But the orange bar is what matters. That is what actually ends up being the reserve fund when the books close at the end of the year. Here's the thing. The district is always wrong about its financial projections. But just how wrong are they? After 1 year, the district's projections are off by 57%. If we look 2 years out, the district's projection is off by 268%. So why are they so far off? It's not because they're bad at math. This is austerity budgeting. It's budgeting in a way that makes it look to union members and to parents that there's simply not enough money for what we need in our schools. And this is a tactic. Now, the reality is that they did deficit spend this last year, but that's not a crisis. That's what the reserve is for. The important thing to note is that they did not deficit spend by anywhere near what they planned to. This chart shows you what we call here extra reserve. That's money based on their budgeting that they did not even expect to have. This is not the full unrestricted reserve. That's $5.03 billion. This is just the part of that they didn't even expect to have. Last year, they budgeted to spend $1.24 billion more of the unrestricted reserve than they actually ended up spending. That spending was approved by the school board and the county. If we take LAUSD at their word, they did not expect to have that money this year, but they do. We're saying that $1.24 billion is available for our pay and our staffing. Now let's see what other money they can spend on you. So we're gonna look at this graph again that I showed you before. Remember, this is the one with UTLA salaries as a percentage of total spending. If LA Unified had held constant with the 40% that they were paying us in the 2013-2014 school year, that would be an additional $1 billion this year alone. That means changing their priorities, spending less on consultants and contractors and more on you. So that's $1 billion additional dollars that are available. That still leaves a huge reserve that, because of their bad math, we can credibly say can be tapped as well without depleting it all at the pace that LAUSD claims. This is only part of the funding that's available to invest in staff and students. And it shows that the district is just hiding money in their austerity budgeting and that they actually have enough money to afford the contract that we all deserve.